Yeah, I'm Paul Davis with GreatDad.com, and here with my weekly series of conversations with fathers and looking at how modern dads parent. And I'm excited today to talk kind of something that ties in with several conversations I've been having recently. Talking with Aaron Shelley, who's got a website called the familyflywheel.com. Welcome, Aaron.
What's up, Paul? I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so I'm really intrigued with your thinking because I think for a lot of men, the way you're approaching family dynamics makes sense because it's a metaphor that a lot of dads, especially the dads who are really focused on work and career, can understand when they take what they're probably really effective at doing in one portion of their life and how they can do it at home. So maybe you could talk a little bit just about your overall vision of the metaphor of work and how it works in the family.
Yeah. So my vision for the metaphor is really just taking a lot of those, like you said, business principles over to family. And so as soon as you look at a business, you would say, what's their business model? Right? Like, what are they trying to do? What's their mission? What's Google trying to do? They're trying to organize the world's data. That's their big strategy piece. And then you'd say, like, what structures do they have in place? Well, they have all their equity, they have different management, they have different roles that everyone's playing. And then you look at their culture and you'd say, well, they have this culture of freedom and responsibility. Like they can, if you work great at 4 a.m., go great. We don't care about when you work, we just care about output. Right. And so that's kind of their business model. And you see that business model then prioritizes innovation. It prioritizes, people learning hard things, that hire a lot of really smart people. And so that's really their business model. And then you look at the family and you're like, well, what's your family's business model? How are you trying to make money? You got to have it. But then what do you want? What's your long-term strategies and goals? And what structures are in place between, if it's just you, as an individual, what structures do you have to make yourself successful? If you have a partner, just like in business, you shouldn't be trying to overlap. Like you're going to do the dishes and I'm going to do it. You'd be looking and going, let's specialize, right? Like I'll specialize in my marriage. I take care of the outside of the house pretty much. And my wife takes care of most of the inside of the stuff. Like, so if it's leaking, there's a leak in the roof. I'm the one up on the roof in the middle of October. It's happened. It's a dark, rainy night and up on the roof because that's my responsibility. And,
And,
I couldn't,
ostensibly, she gives you a bonus because you've done your job well.
I mean, that's the whole thing when you get into it in a business. I can't sit there and say, well, you as a salesperson, your work isn't as important as mine as a developer
Right.
because we need each other in a business. And if we're smart, we appreciate them. Like, man, I love you salespeople because you guys like to talk to people. And then they're like, yeah, I love you product people because you guys like to sit and code and not talk to people. Right. So you have this very complementary relationship in a business through specialization of roles. But you see when people like early founders, if they get on top of each other and, well, I'm doing marketing and you're doing marketing and we all have to do everything. It would be a nightmare. And you'd also be stepping on each other's toes, making each other angry, that type of stuff. And I think the same metaphor should be happening in our marriages and our relationships. I mean, we could do an extended family. I mean, you could live with your in-laws as well. There's different models for this. Those would be structural elements. Are you going to go at life alone? Are you going to have a partner? Are you going to have kids? Are you going to have your extended family, maybe live with them? There's different models that you could go through in that piece. And then culturally, what type of culture do you want to have? And it depends on what cultural values, if you're going to be a blue collar worker, I have a brother-in-law who's an arborist. That's a different set of values than working at Google. Like if you're going to be a technologist, right? Technologists constantly need to be learning. I mean, I've done code. I'm on my, I don't know, seventh or eighth language that I've learned over time in coding. My brother-in-law's been doing the arborist with probably a few changes for his entire career, 30 years. So you look at the cultures need to be different for those two people. And it's not saying one's good or bad, but you need to have alignment with your strategy, structure, and culture, or your business model, whether you're a business or a family, isn't going to be effective. So that's kind of the core, kind of what I would call resource producing thing is the business model. Does that make sense?
Well, I think there are 2 points in there that are important is when you're looking at the family, whether you use this metaphor of a business or some other structure, is having some sort of structure that you're starting out with a plan, and then ideally that plan is in sync with your stakeholders, which usually is your partner and eventually your kids when they're old enough to figure out what's going on, and that you're all doing the same thing because you and I have been around long enough to have worked in organizations where one person's idea is this way, the other person is that way, and that's when things really fall apart and can't hold together.
Well, and that's another piece of the structure is this what meetings do you have? If you look in a company, you have your executive team will usually have a weekly meeting just to stay on the same page, stay coordinated. Then you'll have a quarterly meeting where you're looking further ahead, and then an annual meeting where you're looking at the bigger goals and usually looking 5 to 10 years in the future. And then you look in the family and it's like, if you get married and you're like, we're on the same page, but you don't have these regular check-ins and structured things like, are we on the same page in terms of where we want to go? Should I keep working? Should you keep working? Like, how do we do that? And especially in today's economy with women being able to work and get good jobs, men being able to do it, a lot of times it's more negotiation of what do we want for our family? I ran an Irish dance business with my wife for 25 years. And that was kind of the underlying, we have a studio behind our house. And my wife's been running, she takes most of the work of it in terms of teaching, but I do all the technology. And then there were points when that kind of gave us this underlying income that then I could take bigger risks in my career and take more, like I worked at startups, I worked at smaller companies because I didn't need a lot of the stability that those give. And so that's kind of where I see this balance. And there's times when the startup I was working with goes out of business. And then I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? And my wife's like, well, what should we do? What do you want to do? Right. And so there's always this rebalancing, before we started, we were talking about how you and your wife rebalanced. And it's like, what do you want for your kids? What do you want for your family? Who's going to be doing the parenting? Who has time to do it? My wife teaches dance at night. It means I needed to be home at night to help kids with homework, to, facilitate in those type of things. Or I could have just let them run, be latchkey kids, but the outcomes aren't good, at least from what I've seen. So that's the type of thing we're looking at is like, what structures do you have in place to stay on the same page and to be dynamic, right? In business, they often talk about pivots, right? Like we were doing this, then we're going to go over here because there's a better opportunity or this change.
Situation change, right? Right.
And so you need to be consistently having some meetings with your wife to stay on that same page with her, or you could be off of here like, I'm a doctor, I'm making all this money. And then your wife's like, yeah, and I don't like it. And I hate this. And your wife, you end up getting divorced and their kids hate them, their wife hates them. And you're like, well, that was stupid. Is that the outcome you wanted? Like you're rich, sick, and miserable, and lonely.
Well, yeah, we did. I'm sure we both know families that clearly have operated for that way for a long time. And the way that the rather than the couples talking to each other about the issues, they talk to their friends about how miserable the other person is because they go off and do their own thing selfishly. And it's not always, it's not always one person is evil and the other person isn't. It's just a lack of communication leads to that kind of dysfunction and inability to communicate. I think a lot of families, for that reason, I mean, there's a reason and there's a lot of study behind the value of family dinners, for example, that plays that role for a lot of families. Is it's the one time nightly or as often as possible where they actually get together and hopefully they don't just talk about sports or the weather, but they do talk about where, do we want to take a vacation this year? Where would we want to go? What are the kids interested in schools, or how do we have to get ahead of the college application process? Whatever it is, because there are a billion one things happening in family. It's not quite the same as in an organization, but you need some sort of structure for that communication. So do you advise people to have more of a formal structure, like really set down a quarterly schedule for this type of meeting, or could it be organic?
I would advise I'm an engineer.
So we know how it's going to get.
I mean, and I've seen it where if you always plan on having these structured things, like we're going to have a quarterly meeting. I've had quarterly plannings. It pushes me to look back and go like, what did I do? It's even accountability for me as the dad, for my wife. It's like, we're in this together, this thing called life. Once your kids get older, you're like, wow, are we still in it together? Or are we not? But if you're looking back continuously and going, well, what did we do this quarter? Did I just waste my time? Was it bad investment? Right. If you look at it, what's a good feedback loop for you so that you would change your behavior? So you'll learn. So many people get caught up in ruts and they don't really know why they're in a rut. They don't have some structure to help them think about it. And then they just go, they screw up their life. And you see that same thing in business. Like, imagine if your sales are going down and you're like, well, we never think about it. Yeah. Like the one sales guy is like, I'm seeing it. And maybe the CFO, but everyone else is oblivious to it. And then at some point, that whole fantasy world's going to stop when you're like, and our sales are down, everyone's fired. No, we need to do a layoff. Like at some point, reality needs to be there. And one of the things you talk about that I think is interesting, those family dinners, I look at it and go, when I was young, we had family dinners and we had actually, weekly meetings with the family to stay on. And I think those were just a dinner, but I think they actually played up as family therapy in some ways. If you look at a young kid, if they go through an experience at school, they get kicked in the face for some reason. Then they come home and they're like, I got kicked. And then the parents like, well, what happened? Did you kick him first? Well, yeah. Okay. Maybe don't kick him. Helps the kids learn in the moment. If you have this regular structured time with your kids, they fail a test. Well, why did you fail? Did you not prepare? Did you prepare the wrong material? Did the teacher not communicate? Like you're trying to help them process the world. And I think what we've seen is a lot of parents have now, gone and just worked and they have a lot of money, but then their kids haven't had any time to process all these experiences. And then they all need therapy to go and process all this stuff that I think the family used to process either at family dinners or with one-on-one time with the parents.
Yeah.
So I think there's these interesting elements which we've kind of lost. We didn't understand that, family dinner wasn't just, hey, it's a time to come together. It's like, what is it a time to do? Is it a time to process, download your day, get on the same page, make sure there's no big emotional issues? If it is, then that's really beneficial. But if you don't understand that that's what you lost when you didn't do family dinners, then you're watching your kids when they're 18 and you're like, why are they so screwed up? Why are they still in the house? They have no skills. Ooh, I really messed this up. But you don't really understand why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the family dinner metaphor is kind of, for example, it's kind of failed in some way versus what we did in the business world, because, in a usual business meeting, you've got an agenda and you've got objectives and there are going to be notes and there are going to be decisions made and there are going to be delegation of authority and things. And some of that, you could use all those little metaphors for what happens at a family dinner, but it's a lot more organic or a lot less structured than that. Do you think of it in that way? When you sit down for a family dinner, do you have some things like, I guess, that's normal. We have like, I want to make sure that, when we get together tonight, we do mention that we have to make a reservation if we're going to go for a trip, or we have to talk about the fact that everybody has to be here on Thursday because grandma's coming over or whatever. But do you consciously think of it that way, like as a business need?
Not that specific one. I would say I usually do a weekly meeting with the kids where we do talk
Yeah.
about just calendar, make sure we're all coordinated with logistics, with cars. You need a car here. You have this activity here. There's things with my wife's like, I told you this. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go to this kids event. You're like, it's just sometimes things slip through the cracks. So it's just really a coordination meeting. And then it's also, looking at our values, talking about some of the other things in terms of religion, that's where I think you have to have a time to reinforce your culture, right? If you're religious, you need to reinforce your culture somewhere. If you're non-religious, well, what are your values you're trying to reinforce? Because it can be very dangerous. What I've seen is if you don't reinforce your culture and aren't intentional about it, your kids, even though they grew up in the same house, they'll walk away with very bizarre messages. You're like, I did not believe that. I did not teach you that. No, look, because you did this. You're like, oh my gosh, you totally misunderstood the lesson there.
Yeah,
So,
well,
so that's
I was a marketing guy for my entire career, so I'm particularly attracted to the whole idea of corporate culture, brand values, mission statement, the guiding principles of an organization or a brand or a family. So I really love the idea of starting with value orientation. If you could define 3 to 5 values that are really important to you, loyalty, legacy. There's a whole list of them, which I probably should plug on my website because I have developed a family values list. But if you can share that with your partner and that that your family stands for these things and that you communicate those, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like, a motto written on a piece of plywood on the kitchen wall or anything, but those are underlying important things to keep on communicating to your kids, just the same way as they would be in a branding statement or an advertising strategy.
Well, yeah, I think there's this place where parents for some reason seem like they don't want to help their kids in terms of their beliefs and push them in any direction. And it feels
Mm,
like a lot of kids now are kind of in this mode of I have a lot, I could do anything, but I don't know what to do. You know, when I went to college, it was, I guess you'll be an engineer because you like science and math, or, oh, you like those? Great. That's probably the kind of the direction. But it wasn't any real long. And then I ended up getting frustrated with business people and then getting an MBA. Right. So it's like, I need to understand the business thing. So that's where I see like our job as parents is to guide our kids through the questions, not answer the questions for them, but like, just like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker, it's like you can't do everything for your kids, but you need to guide them in the paths that they'll be successful in. And I think for some reason, parents are like, well, I didn't know. I don't really know what's going on. Yeah. And that's kind of the fun thing when you get into business, right? You're like, you always think someone's like, oh, they know everything. And then you get in there, you're like, oh my gosh, they're just as dumb as we all are. I'm like, okay. I was hoping they knew everything and they knew the magic bullets. Turns out they don't. And that's where I think there's this realization. I don't know. Maybe it's just parents in business. You hear it a lot where we talk about imposter syndrome.
mhm.
I think a lot of parents feel imposter syndrome. I don't know how you were, but when I got my first baby home, I was like, what in the world? Like, where's the user's manual? What
Right.
freak are you? Are you sure?
So
So
also, so you also talked about the fact of the specialization of roles that people do different things. In the old world, it was mom who stayed at home, dad went out to do the work, and now it's a lot more mixed, a lot more overlap. But people do still take on roles. And how do you develop that? I remember in the corporate culture. I'd love to say that everybody treated everybody exactly like had the same amount of respect, but there was always some groups and who weren't as respected or as admired as other groups. And I think that happens quite often in the family. For a long time, it was women's household work, take care of the kids, was not as respected. It didn't make any money. It was hard to quantify a value for it. So how do you develop a culture where, whether it's the guy who stays home or the mom who stays home or whatever the parent situation is, how 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 you value everybody equally in those roles using the business metaphor.
to me, it comes to expanding out this idea of what are the resources every business has. They have financial resources, money that's coming in property, real estate, that type of stuff. They have social resources, which is their one-on-one relationships with other people, group affiliations, right? If you're part of an advertising group, and then you have your reputation in the business world, your brand, right? Those things, if you look at the social, those are social, and then you have human resources, which are skills, time, and your health. So if you really look at social resources in the business world, we don't know how to quantify those very well. How much is Nike's brand worth? If you look on their balance sheet, everyone's like, it's got to be a lot. Let's throw a number to it. But they actually don't have a good idea. If you look at brand building, if you look at PR, so much of PR, it's like, well, what's my return on investment here? Oh, you're building a reputation. It's going to help with recruiting. It's going to help. There's these social resources that people aren't accounting for, often don't account for in a business. That's why they love pay per click, right? I know what I'm getting.
Yes. Right.
But that's developing those social connections outside of the business. And in the family, those social connections are very important. That's your connections with your community. That's you having friends. Those friends, I mean, my friends helped me get jobs that I had one-on-one relationships with. People in my church helped me do activities with my home. I didn't even know them, but they were like, hey, we're part of the same group. We'll help you.
Right.
And then, over the years, we've developed a brand with my wife's Irish dance stuff. And so people are coming to us and they're like, well, you guys are great. And that's social investing. I don't think we've been accounting for in our families, right? We've said, well, everyone is going to invest for money, right? We're going to go to work. And then you go, but who's investing in the social resources? Because that helps with mental health. That helps with connecting. I mean, a fun example I talk about on the social resources is Bill Gates' mother, Mary Gates. She was a school teacher. She got married to a lawyer, Bill Gates Sr. And then she had 3 children, stopped working, invested in her children's education, developing the human resources of the family. right? It was where she was investing her time. Then her kids got older and she decided to go back out into society and invest in social resources by serving in the community. So she served on the University of Washington's board and she served on United Way's board. Well, it turns out that the CEO of IBM was also on United Way's board, who happened to be a very important connection for Bill Gates. So
Mm.
you can look at Bill Gates' success and go, well, he just did it. He was this genius. But that connection may have been worth $100 billion to the family. And that was through investing in social resources, not just investing in financial resources. Right. So that to me is a great example of how families, if you connect with your community and someone's doing that investment, it most likely will give you payoffs in financial terms at some point, but it also gives you payoffs in human resources in terms of your mental health. Right.
Yeah.
Everyone you see when people become isolated, their mental health goes down. And so if everyone's just going to work, coming home in their little bubbles, watching Netflix, like we kind of did with COVID, everyone's kind of miserable and we have mental health issues. So that to me is if you're expanding the bubble and understanding the full spectrum of investment that a family needs, then you can go, oh, it's not that my wife's staying home. It's that my wife is investing in the human resources of the family. She's investing in the health of the family normally with cooking, cleaning and all that stuff. And she's also investing in the social resources of the family, being, developing relationships and serving in the community. And so if you look at that in a holistic perspective, you go, oh, my husband's investing in financial return. I'm investing in these other two. He'll help me in these other ways as well. But that's how we're investing. It's the same as being, to me, what we've done essentially in the family is gotten rid of our marketing and sales departments. Right. And then you go, I wonder why our families are sucking. Well, you're missing two of the most important pieces.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it does because I I guess the problem with all the parts of the marketing thing has all historically been the ROI. And as much as my whole mission since I started GreatDad.com when I left the corporate world to stay at home was to promote involved parenting by fathers. And without talking a lot about the ROI on that, why do we do that? I loosely talk about the value to the father and how much more vibrant life is if you have a close relationship with the kids. The often cited quote that most men's largest regret on their deathbed is that they didn't spend more time with their family, and then obviously the effect on the kids. But I think for a business person who is in that real mindset, the idea that you have a product that is your children and you're developing the product to launch that product over a long period of time, like 18, 20 years, you would think about it differently. If you were a startup investor with a great idea that's going to take a long time to launch, 20 years is a long horizon, but there've been products like that, but that you would do it differently if you knew the importance of that product, and that product is not only the child, but it's your social network, it's your reputation, it's a lot of different things wrapped up in the production of well functioning adults.
Well, yeah. And I think if you look at it and said, would you rather have $10 million or $100 million and all of your kids screwed up
Eh,
and your wife hating you? Or would you rather have, less money, 10 million or whatever, and have your kids love you and support you and your grandkids and all these type of things? I think it's difficult when we're young. When we're really young, we're just like, especially for men, we're like, we got to get some money. We got to get on top of this. And so that's where the focus is.
right.
But I think as older men, as we've gotten older, you're like, wow, how much would you pay to unscrew up your kids? I've known parents who are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for different camps, for drug rehab, for all of these things. And those are all consequences of neglect when they were young. And you're like, my kids never listened to me. Well, did you invest in those relationships? Right. I've thought about this where you have, in order for a business to be successful, you need a reserve of money in case sales go down, right? You need a reserve of those. You need a reserve on your reputation of your social resources. You need to have developed this brand so that if you have some problem or some issue in social media, the Bud Light scandal comes to mind where it's like, wow, you're taking a big hit. What's your
Thank you.
response to that? You need to have some built up equity there. And you also need to invest in your health, because if you get sick and you're already sick, you know, oh, I had diabetes, I was already overweight, I had all these things. Now I got this other sickness. Now your health is really at risk. So you kind of need these reservoirs of each resource type for a successful family and a successful business. But it's harder to know, it's harder to see some of the social and those human resources reservoirs. And so we often don't invest that way. But you look in terms of kids and you're like, I mean, my wife and I have talked, and I was like, if there was ever a point where our kids were in danger, like our kids weren't turning out the way we wanted, she's like, I would drop this business in a heartbeat. Like, it's clear that's the priority, right? Money, you can find more money, you can do other things, but those 18 years or your kids are in the house, or depending if they leave, but those early years are so impactful in developing how they look at themselves, how they look at the world, and how they perceive it. So you can't ever get that back. So to me, underinvesting in your children's relationships is a tragedy, because you'll never get it back. You can always have more time to make money, especially, we're living longer, we're doing those type of things, but we'll never have the opportunity to raise our kids.
Yeah, I unfortunately I find this really a big challenge in terms of talking to because I do work as a coach with dads. Is this message of getting ahead of it? Coaching is more for helping you optimize the situation rather than pulling you out of a trough. So once you are in a situation where your kids might have health issues or or any one of the many temptations are out there, it's not what I do. I mean, that somebody else can help on that. But trying to convince dads, whether it's for $1 or an hour of their time, or a $5,000 commitment to help coach them through a lot of these business practices that you're talking about that translate in the family, orientation and communication skills and positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, all those things. It's hard to help them get ahead of it. You're perfectly spot on. Like, looking back, how much would you have paid to avoid the pain and suffering of having to go through one of these traumas? But how much time and effort are you willing to put in ahead of the game during the annual planning session, the quarter planning session, or the lessons learned slide, where you say, what am I going to do next year? Get ahead of it. And it's a huge challenge in the world of coaching, is especially trying to attract dads into coaching their families.
Well, and yeah, and that's where you go through one of the structural things almost every company I've ever been with talks about is weekly one-on-ones with your employees.
Yeah.
Right? Because otherwise you get disconnected, then you have problems. Well, are
Yeah.
you doing weekly one-on-ones with your kids?
Yeah.
If you're not, you're getting disconnected from them. And I think it's important for dads. I think dads, especially, a lot of them are like doing a whole bunch of activities, and then they become a dad, and then they stop all the activities they used to like. And then, they're like, I'm not really happy. And to me, there's a form of investing. I call it super investing. Okay, I'm going to go, develop this, play with my friends, or go skiing. For me, I like to ski. I like the mountain bike. I'm going to go do that. And it feeds my soul. And then I'm like, well, if I do it with my kids, then I'm investing in the relationship as well as in my health. And then I'm also teaching them the love of those same things. So that to me is the place where we have the opportunity as men, pull your kids into your activities. Right? I play volleyball weekly, and I pulled my kids when they were 13. It's a bunch of guys, and it's actually pretty high level, but I pulled my kids in, started to have them teach them, and then they've kind of become part of the group. And they're like, oh, I love this. And that group is a whole bunch of successful men doing different things, and women, actually. When you look at it going, this is something I love. Now I get to spend time with my kids. Now I'm helping give my kids their social connections. I'm building their social resources, and I'm building mine, and I'm building my network with them. Right? These people. And so that's where I think if dads spend time with their kids, I did skiing with my kids, my whole family. It was a good activity for us. It cost money, but we spent a lot of time. It reinforced our culture of learning through failure and doing hard things. So a lot of the activities dad want to do, I think they should try to pull their kids into. Even video games, I've done it with my son. I like to play video games. He likes to play them, but I'm like, what happens when we play too much? Yep. How do we control that? And I can talk to it clearly because I like to do it. So I think a lot of dads have kind of muted themselves in some way, trying to make life work without pulling their children into a lot of the activities they did in the past, camping, fishing. I've seen so many kids, once you get them in that environment, they start to talk to you differently. They start to think differently. You have this time as a dad to actually help them develop their critical thinking skills and develop their relationship with you, which is, two of the very most important things to me as a dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, I kind of come back to the communication part, and maybe that's the most important part of the business metaphor is the communication and the awareness, or maybe it's the intentionality. It's not stumbling through the parenting, but kind of having a plan, whether it's exactly like with the setting or not. It's a plan to use some of those things that we know from the business world at home.
And that's where, just like in a business, you would say, how are we investing in our marketing? Right? How are we investing in our health? Like your HR team, right? We have our insurance. There's constantly all this. How are we investing in those different things? I think to some degree, a lot of men act like a CFO, but they act like a pretty crappy one
Right.
because they're the CFO who's kind of just focused on saving money.
Right.
Instead of saying, a lot of CFOs that I've seen will be like, we're under investing relative to the general market in marketing or in product right now. Right. And so that's what I've seen, where they're looking at these things holistically and going, it's not about just the money. It's also about what are we investing in? Because, you can save a ton of money by not investing in marketing. It's going to suck down the line. And so it's the same thing. Like, how are we investing in our children's education? How are we investing in our relationships? And so if you're only focused on how are we investing for money, it's bad. But if you're like, how are we investing in our relationships with our kids? How are we investing in our relationships with the community? How are we investing in our health? All those things should be considered as a holistic investment strategy, just like we do in business, right? Look at all the line items, and those should be there. And then we should be like, well, we haven't had any type of family vacation get together for years. Well, we saved money. Okay, but did we miss relationships? Right. So that's where I think a lot of it's holistically taking a step back and saying, yeah, the finances are good, but they could always be better. But what are the relationships like? And how do we measure those? In businesses, we'll do ENPS scores, net promoter scores, those type of things to get a feel for where things are at. We really don't know where a lot of kids are from what I've seen. And that's where I think it's a big danger for us.
Mhm. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what is at the flywheel.com? What resources do you have for?
So at the familyflywheel.com, you have a link to the book. You can find it on Amazon. It also has downloadable book resources, which are, you don't have to have the book, but it just helps you go through your family business model. Just think through, what culture do you have? What structure do you have? What strategy are you using? What resources do you have? If you and your spouse do those separately, then you can look at the overlap and be like, okay, is our culture on the right thing? It gives you something to discuss and kind of negotiate. And anyone who's been through, a business trying to come up with a mission statement, I'm sure you've gone through with the branding. What are our values? What are we putting out? What's our persona? These things are not easy, simplistic, like, oh, here's what it is. It's long-term thinking about them. But once you get them, then it's very easy to negotiate all of the little stuff. So that's really what I have on the Family Flywheel right now. I'm in the course of developing an app as well to help with a lot of the structure, cultural reinforcement stuff as well. But that'll be probably 3 to 6 months more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the values thing, I mean, I think a lot of couples would benefit from that, from looking at it, that pre-marriage, to make sure you're on the same page, because there's a lot of value stuff that comes out after the original romance is gone, where you realize that sometimes your values are totally out of sync. So what does a corporation do when that happens, when like this, you have a CFO and a CMO who have totally different visions for, what the values of the company. The CFO says, no, let's pull all the cost of goods out of the product because I want to make more money. I shareholders house, and you well still have to come to grips with that, and something in the middle. I mean, it's a challenge if you say that both of your value orientations have validity, but it becomes a negotiation on where you find the middle.
Right, exactly. There's not a right answer. And if you look at, I mean, if you look at most parents and you ask them, like, what do you want for your kids? I want them to be happy and successful. Okay, you have to, what does that look like? You know what I mean? What do you want for every business? We want to make money and we want to grow. Okay, that doesn't help us get down to any of the logistics. So going through the value exercise, going through the strategy exercise is super important because you could see it. I've done some coaching with some women and they're highly successful women. And then they're like, I want to marry a guy who's highly successful. And I'm like, who stays home and takes care of the kids? And she's
Yeah,
like,
we're
well,
always
he would.
forgotten. Yeah.
He would. Well, wait a minute. He's highly successful, super driven. He wants to become a, C-level or he's there. And she's like, well, I never thought about that. And I'm like, you're looking for a unicorn in most cases, which is why you're having trouble in dating. And sometimes you're like, well, what are really your priorities? And that's where I think a lot of the dating stuff, it's around what do you want your long-term strategy to be? And there's a lot of conditions that you need to consider, your biology, all sorts of things. Do you want to have kids? How that's going to work? What are those? But it's like getting those straight before marriage is super important. Just like in a business, if you and I were going to start a business and I'm like, you'll do marketing and I'll do marketing, it'd be great. And you're like, who's going to do the product stuff? Maybe we should either go get another founder or we shouldn't start a company.
Right. Right.
Right. Or if we were like, oh, we want to start a marketing company and I want to start a development company. And you're like, this doesn't work. Like maybe we can find a vision in the middle, but probably not. And I think really that's why we're saying divorce rates are high because there's not this long-term vision. And then they have no way to deal with it dynamically because they don't have structures to go, well, we were on the same page a week ago. Now we're starting to drift. Okay, let's get us back. Or we're having bigger issues. Now we're starting to drift. So I think there's a lot of those systems and structures that are in place that help us stay on course. And you ask most people in business, they're like, I don't like meetings. But you're like, you know what you like less? Not being informed at all.
Yeah.
So I agree. Like it's the
Yeah.
startup of the family that's super important.
Yeah. Well, all this stuff, getting ahead of the issues before they start is key to everything in business. And it is in the family, even though a lot of us just have that idea that it just all will just happen organically while we focus on the money part. Yeah. So I think we've talked a lot about people who are at a different socioeconomic scale too. There are a lot of people out there who are struggling, who are just trying to put food on the table. And I want to make sure that we're sympathetic to the fact that they have to even be more creative in finding how they plan to be good parents and be, I shouldn't say good parents, but present parents and supportive parents, even though they might not have, the ski vacation or whatever, or the structure to even put a family dinner together every day. But it requires still that same, I think that same discipline that you find the time somewhere else if you can't do it in what is maybe more of a traditional sense. Car rides to school or bus rides to school or whatever it is, but that you don't get in the same way. You don't just take it for granted that it's all going to work without a plan.
And there's also this idea where a lot of people, they want to make, just like in business, I want to do something, start a business, and then I want it to be successful a month later, 3 months later, 6 months. These are generational in some cases changes. But a lot of times, if you just do good habits, 5 or 10 years, it may not help you a ton as the parent, but then you're seeing your kids are now on the next, you're like, oh, okay, I've learned this about it. Now my kids, they're doing a little better than I am. If I look back at my grandparents, my grandfather, my mom's dad was a farmer, potato farmer. I'm doing way better than he was, but it's because of this generational benefit that I've got from them making good decisions. Then their children make good decisions. Then their children make good decisions. If you can perpetuate that good decision making just like in a company,
Yeah.
if you have a good sales group and then you get it better and then you come up with new versions and better marketing, and then you look at that and say, it's obvious. This is a generational, takes time, and it's good decisions over time. And so once you get there, I think that's where you have to, it's not a destination. It's doing it over and over.
Yeah. It's a long journey and you make mistakes along the way, but it's like in business, lessons learned, you move forward. Well, it's just really interesting to talk about this as a framework. And I think it's very relatable, especially to a lot of men, but increasingly a lot of women who are really focused on their career, but don't necessarily bring those lessons back home. So again, your website is thefamilyflywheel.com. Aaron Shelley, I'm really been a Really fun to talk to you about all this and look at this in a different light, because it's little bit different angle for me. I don't always think of my past career as helping in the fatherhood space, but probably it does.
Thanks a lot, Paul. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay. Paul Banus at GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching services at Paul Banus or at GreatDad.com/coaching and GreatDad.com/PQ for my 7-week positive intelligence course. Until next time.